So over the course of the last few months, I've been showing my fiance a bunch of shows that she's never watched before, shows that I love. Some of those including this one, The Office, also Parks and Recreation, as well as the show Lost. But we've also been watching some shows that are new to us for the very first time, like the first season of The Witcher. I've been slacking on getting my reviews out for these TV shows, so I thought I'd start to whittle down that list just a little bit, and let's go ahead and get into this with The Office. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the US version of The Office. At some point I'll probably go back and check out the UK version. I saw it back in the day when I first got into The Office and I wasn't crazy about it, but maybe one day I'll be able to give it another try and kind of catalog it here on the channel. And that's what I want to do here with this video, because at the end of the day, this is a franchise or series that is incredibly popular. I think most of you who are watching this have probably seen it at some point, and it already has like this a long history of just being a beloved show that I feel like, what else can I really add to the conversation? But I kind of just wanted to add this to the catalog of reviews here on the channel and just talk about a show that I genuinely love. I hopped onto The Office maybe around the second or third season, maybe closer to the end of the second season. I saw a couple random episodes and then I decided to restart it, and I fell absolutely in love with the show, and I've been watching it ever since, or at least watched it ever since. Now, this was the second time that I watched the show in its entirety from beginning to end. I've seen pretty much most, if not all, episodes of the show at least 2 times or 3 times before this rewatch, but it was just kind of sporadic. Maybe a couple rewatches here and there at a couple friends' house. Maybe a friend of mine was watching a certain portion of a certain season and I would kind of hop in and watch a little bit with them here and there. And so just over the course of all the years, I've just seen pretty much most of the episodes a bunch of times, some of them being 4 or 5 times, if not more. Now, I know that's pretty small numbers compared to a lot of big The Office fans. So yeah, trust me, I'm not trying to say I'm the biggest Office fan here in any way, shape, or form, because what I love about this show is that it has kind of acquired this massive fan base. It had a huge fan base when it was airing on TV, but over the course of the years, as the show has been over, which I believe was back in like 2013, I could be wrong, but I believe it's back in 2013. Yeah, it's been really great to see the show just continue to have legs, to continue to have a life on social media and on streaming, and to just see so many people love this show, use it as gifs and memes, and it's just such a great time. It's a show that when you first start it, if you aren't really into this kind of comedy, you may kind of think it's this cringe humor that kind of toes the line on being borderline offensive. But what I love about this show is that it handles all of those things in such a great way. It does have that cringe humor, and there is no getting around that, but it's one of those shows that allows you to really fall in love with the characters and their story, and they put that at the forefront before the comedy. Now, the comedy is definitely there at the forefront along with the characters, but what I love about this show is it's one of those things that as the episodes go on, as the seasons go on, you find yourself laughing, not because what's happening or what's being said is necessarily funny, which in most cases it is, but because of the fact that you really get to attach to these characters and their journey and who they are as characters. So when they say or do something, even something really subtle or just really small, what I really enjoy about it is that you end up laughing because you know who they are. I think we all have those friends or family members in our lives. There's people in our lives in general, or maybe just that acquaintance that you work with that is just funny because you know who they are. It's not that they're really funny in and of themselves. It's not that they really say these great jokes or anything like that. It's just because the way that they are and their natural behavior in certain situations is just naturally funny. And that's what I love about this show. So for anybody who does not know what the show is all about, The Office takes place in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and focuses on a small office for a paper company called Dunder Mifflin. This is just one of their many branches, and the show is a comedy mockumentary show. For anybody who's not familiar with what a mockumentary is, this show is definitely one of those earliest shows that kind of helped pave the way for that. And the basic idea of a mockumentary, whether it's in a movie or on a TV show, is to frame the show around the idea that this is a documentary, that all these characters and all these actors are real people, and that they're just kind of being caught on camera by these TV crews. So in the case of The Office, there's an actual TV show called The Office that's being made inside of the show, and so there's a camera crew going around everywhere and filming this small random paper company office. And what I really enjoy about this show is that it does such a great job of utilizing that tool, or utilizing the fact that the people who are holding the camera are also holding boom mics and are all there as a production team, which makes for the performances to be a lot funnier. All the characters will do and say different things depending on whether or not they think they're being filmed at the time, and that's kind of where I feel like the greatest nuance of the characters and their moments really shines. Because what I really enjoy about this show, beyond its hijinks and beyond its silly characters and all the big fun over-the-top elements that this show does have, what I really enjoy about it at its core are its characters and its story. And I think a lot of times when people are like, oh, The Office isn't funny, that's not a good show, I saw 2 episodes. You just haven't seen anything. You just haven't seen anything. What I love about this show is that it really is about the characters. You're laughing way into the show because of who these characters are and the journey that you've had with them. There's romances, there's friendships, there's just overall respect amongst the characters that build. You know, there's disdain, there's arguments, there's issues that happen. And I think the show handles it so well in a way where you can really attach to these characters, really feel for them in the really serious moments, but you're also able to just kind of laugh with them and have a smile on while you're watching the show. The Office is without a doubt a show that has made me laugh, cry, smile, be angry at what's happening, and also just completely invested. It's one of those shows where you're talking to the screen and you're dying to see the next episode. And at first it doesn't start that way. At first it's kind of like this, kind of offbeat, kind of silly comedy. But as the episodes progress, especially just jumping into season 2, the storytelling really starts to take it to the next level. And I really have to commend the writing team for this show, for the most part, for everything that they've done to really build these characters, as well as the performers, because the actors bring so much nuance to their characters. In just a moment, I'm going to get into my thoughts on all of the biggest characters in the show. There's a lot of them that I'm not going to mention here, but I will say that all the performances in this show are really top notch, and everybody brings something that really is unique to their character and to the show overall. But I do want to talk about at least the main chunk of characters and their performers and kind of just give my general thoughts on them, because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to a show like this, and I don't really know what I can add to the conversation that hasn't already been said. But I just really want to emphasize the fact that one of the greatest parts of this show that I think a lot of people sometimes look over because they're looking at the comedy or they're looking at, maybe the character moments, without a doubt are the performers. Now, of course, I know people definitely praise the performances of the show, but I just want to really highlight that in this review because, again, I mentioned earlier that they use the whole element of the mockumentary thing as a really great tool in the show. Maybe sometimes these characters have the mic still attached to them because they're on a TV show, but the camera is really far off. They don't know that they're being recorded and they get to act a certain way. The actors and actresses are giving us a performance that feels very real, as if this person does not know that they're being filmed. And if the camera shows up out of nowhere and now the camera crew's in front of them, their performance feels very real. Yeah, it's silly, it's over the top sometimes, but their performances do feel real, like genuine people caught in the situation who are being filmed. Maybe sometimes the camera is right up on them in a very emotional or very cringy moment, and their reactions to the fact that they're now kind of in this room being filmed with the camera crew and how they handle that. I think the performers in the show deserve all the praise for making this show work. Because on paper, it could come across as a very bland show. But the people that they casted in this show, without a doubt, are the reason this show really thrives. And you gotta praise the casting department and everybody who's involved in the show on an acting level. They did a phenomenal job. And rewatching this show from beginning to end, I was reinvested in the characters, I was reinvested in the stories, I was reinvested in the romances and the friendships that build. And by the time the show was over, I was sad to have it end again. And I was definitely looking back at a whole viewing of tears and laughter and smiles and just a great enjoyment. It's a fun ride, and I highly recommend The Office to anybody who has never seen this show before. Now I'm going to start getting into the actors and their characters, and that's probably where I'm going to wrap up this review. So let's go ahead and start off with easily the most iconic character from this, Michael Scott, played by Steve Carell. He's phenomenal in this show. When the show first starts, he's this kind of cringy character. He's kind of hard to watch in a lot of ways because he is just this knucklehead, for lack of a better word, that you kind of just want to beat his ass sometimes. He's just this guy who just always says the wrong thing, is constantly offending people. And, there's a lot about this show that definitely would never be in a TV show or a movie today. But I think that people like Steve Carell, the writing team, and this show in general handle all of those sensitive topics in a really great way. Whether it's racism or homosexuality, fat shaming, so many other things. They handle it in such a light and fun way where the show makes fun of everybody and a bunch of different things. And it's not a show that ever comes across offensive. It just feels like it's kind of towing that line. And this is the kind of humor I wish we saw in things more often. I think that Steve Carell does an incredible job in the role, and his performance in this show is easily one of my favorite TV show performances of all time. And I don't think that's new to say in any way, shape, or form. Anybody who watches this show, even if you started by really hating his character, by the time the show wraps up, he will easily be one of your favorite characters, if not your favorite character of the entire show. My fiance is the perfect example because this was her first time. She struggles with secondhand embarrassment, and she was cringing for the first few episodes of the show. And she really struggled with Michael Scott in this show because he's just a bit of a cringy character. He's this character that really just is constantly pushing that line of being so hard to root for. But they do such a great job of giving his character so many layers. And by the time the show is over, you can look back at his character and the character growth that they've given his character, and the way that Steve Carell plays this character, the way he builds up the character through the script is just so believable, and you really do feel for his character and become so attached to him by the time the show is up. Without a doubt, one of my favorite TV show characters of all time, and Steve Carell is just fantastic. Then you have Jenna Fischer as Pam Beesly, and I remember when I was watching this show the first time, and even watching it this time, I had a crush on her the first time, and she just has something with that smile. She's just this really cute actress, and she plays a very cute character. She's the dweeby receptionist, and you just really feel for her character over the course of the show. She's got a lot of different layers of things that are going on, and I think if you looked at the first season, you kind of feel like you know exactly where everything's gonna go, but her character does go through a lot of ups and downs, and you do have to kind of go along for the ride, or sometimes you won't. In the last season, I was struggling with her a little bit. I don't really like the way they wrote her character in the last season. There's a whole storyline with her and the character of Jim Halpert that we'll get into in just one second. That kind of feels a little forced in the final season, just something that felt like maybe it should have happened earlier in the show, especially since it happens like really close to the end of the show overall. But overall, I really love Jenna Fischer in this show, and I think she does a great job as Pam. I just don't really love what they did with Pam as far as the last season and the way that her character just kind of was in a lot of moments. And then I just mentioned Jim Halpert. John Krasinski, a phenomenal actor who not only proved himself as a phenomenal actor in this show, but has gone on to prove himself as a phenomenal writer, director, and actor with things like A Quiet Place and the various other serious properties that he's kind of been a part of since. Jim Halpert is easily one of my favorite characters in the entire show. You really feel for his character throughout. He's the one that you really are rooting for, I feel, the most throughout the entirety of the show. And even when you want to smack him sometimes, he's just such a lovable and likable character. I think that John Krasinski brings this vulnerability to his character that I really am able to attach to, and overall, easily one of my favorite characters in the show. So now let's talk about another easily favorite character of the show for me, and that is Dwight Schrute, played by Rainn Wilson. Come on, Dwight. I think even if you've never seen this show before, you've seen some clip of him, you've seen some meme of him, you've seen him somewhere. Dwight is easily one of the most iconic characters that came out of this show, and Rainn Wilson was the perfect casting for him. He's this character that has a very specific way of living and a very specific way of looking at things. He has a very specific upbringing that makes him this way. And it just leads for one of the most comedic characters that I've ever seen in a TV show or a movie ever in my entire life. Rainn Wilson completely commits to the role, and you really do believe him as this over-the-top zany character. And even when you want to slap him, he's absolutely hilarious. And again, it's just the commitment that all these actors have to these roles that really, really sell it. And what I really love about his character is that there are times where he is a douche and you're not really feeling his character, but they do such a great job of being able to really let you sympathize with his character at tons of points in the show. And without a doubt, his relationship with Jim that builds over the course of the show is easily one of the most emotional pieces to the entire show. Then you have Leslie David Baker, who plays Stanley Hudson, and yeah, another great character in the show. Not as much as the other ones that I've mentioned so far. You know, he's definitely one of the smaller characters who doesn't have as much story that's built across the show, but he's just a great side character that's really funny anytime he's there. He's just the lazy, just kind of grumpy guy who works in the office, and he has some of the most iconic lines in the show. There's nobody in the show that I really dislike, except for maybe one that I will get into in just one moment. Stanley Hudson, again, is not one of those absolutely phenomenal characters in the show, but he's great. He's got tons of great moments, tons of laughable moments, and I just thoroughly enjoy him every time I see him in an episode, and he has so many iconic lines that when I look back at the show, easily a character that I have fond memories of. Then you have Brian Baumgartner, I believe that's how his name is pronounced, and he plays the character of Kevin Malone, the big dope in the office, and I just really love his character. He's a character that at first kind of seems like he's not really going to be all that funny, or that he's not really going to be at the forefront of a lot of moments, and he isn't. He in a lot of ways is just another side character, but he's so funny in the show. Really love the way he plays his character, and if you ever see the actor just kind of talking in an interview, he's so different from Kevin Kevin Malone. And so when you see him put on this character that's almost like a big baby, like he's just a big dopey baby who works at this office, and the way he speaks and the kind of dumb things that he does, without a doubt, he is the goofy of the show, and I genuinely enjoy any scene that he's in. Then you have Angela Kinsey as the character of Angela, and yeah, she's the tight ass, right? She's the tight ass of the office who's just constantly nagging about things, constantly has a problem with things. And so sometimes she can be the unlikable character. But I do think the show does a good job of letting you feel for her at times and having those moments where she does become vulnerable, and you kind of get to take a peek through the cracked glass and see that she isn't a total nightmare all the time. So yeah, Angela, I don't have an abundance to say, but I like her character for what it is, but she's not one of my favorites. Then you have Kate Flannery, who plays the character of Meredith. I've never met her before, but I did see her walk right past me at Florida SuperCon a couple years back, because she was there with Oscar, the guy who plays Oscar as well. And so yeah, you know, I like her character. Meredith is just kind of the drunk of the office. She's kind of just like the grimy character that is just kind of gross, but she says the funniest things at the worst time sometimes, and she's like the one who was constantly getting plastered and just wants to sleep with everybody. You know, she's a bit of a stereotype in a way, but she's a funny character. I like her for what she is. Then you have Phyllis Smith playing the character of Phyllis, and yeah, she's one of a few who use their actual first name as the character name for the show. And she's just kind of like the big mom of the office. You know, she's just the nice, big, sweet lady, but she has these moments where she's just roasting people with these one-liners. And yeah, I really enjoy Phyllis Smith in this show. There's these moments where she kind of like lands a zinger, or she has these moments where she's kind of thriving, and she has this little smirk on her face that you just can't help but smile and kind of get into her character. But she's definitely not one of the biggest characters in the show in terms of, like, you know, having a lot of story, but I really do enjoy the moments that she's there. And then you have one of my favorite characters in the show, and that is Creed Bratton, who's also played by Creed Bratton. I really love his character. He is just this old man with a history. He's clearly been to jail. He's probably killed people, and he has all these different things. He's constantly running from the law, and he's just like this kind of creepy dude at times who's constantly trying to get in and out of situations, and you don't really know much about his past. He's this guy who just kind of shows up, and sometimes he'll have different hair. Sometimes he's trying to get in and out of situations randomly. Sometimes his dialogue and some of the things that he says makes you think like, man, this guy definitely has a checkered past. But that's kind of the humor around his character. He doesn't have an abundance to do or say overall as far as the narrative goes, but he's just kind of that old guy who's there with a checkered past, and the mystery of his past is what makes him entertaining. So yeah, without a doubt, some of the funniest lines of dialogue and some of the funniest moments are from Creed in this entire show. I wish that he had more, but I think that maybe would have taken away from the mystery that makes his character so funny. Then you have Oscar Nunez, who plays the character of Oscar, and I also saw him walk past me at Florida SuperCon. I kind of wanted to stop him and say hi, but I didn't want to be that guy because he was going from the booth, I think, to the bathroom, which surprisingly he didn't have security with him. But yeah, I love Oscar in the show. He's a very funny character, has a lot of funny one-liners, and he's kind of like the straight man in a lot of ways, which is funny. He's the straight man in the sense that he's the kind of the character who says the more logical thing in these moments, but he's the gay character who's hiding the fact that he's gay for majority of the show. And once he's outed in the show later on, they just handle it in such a fun and light way, and I really enjoy the way that Oscar Nunez plays the character. Then you have my least favorite character in the show, and that is Kelly Kapoor, played by Mindy Kaling, I believe is how you say her name. Yeah, she's just kind of an annoying character. She's kind of like the valley girl that's just, you know, into boys and texting, and I just don't really have much to really ever attach with her character, and her character throughout the entirety of the show just feels very samey. And even for some of the other characters that do have a samey feel, at least those characters have some sort of growth and there's something that's funny about them. Whereas with Kelly, I just don't really like her. I just never really enjoy any scene that she's in. Which leads to the next character, BJ Novak's character, Rainn, who is funny at times but turns into a bit of a jackass and has this on and off relationship with Kelly throughout the entirety of the show. Never really attached to his character either. He's got funny moments, don't get me wrong. I like Rainn in the show in plenty of times, but he becomes an ass for such a huge portion of the show that I stopped caring about him. Then you have Ed Helms as the character of Andy, a character that when he first shows up in the show, the last thing you think is that he's going to become one of the main characters in the show in the latter seasons of the show, and that's what ends up happening. So yeah, you know, I like Ed Helms overall. I think he's a funny actor and I enjoy him in this show. He's not my favorite character, but he definitely makes me laugh, and yeah, I'll leave it at that when it comes to Ed Helms. Then you have Paul Lieberstein, I believe is how you say his name, who plays Toby, who's the butt of the joke of The Office. He's the HR guy, Michael Scott hates him, and throughout the entirety of the show, he's easily the butt of the joke in almost every situation, or in most situations. They usually don't want him around, and he usually is the buzzkill. And yeah, you know, I like Toby. I like the part he plays in the show. Sometimes I feel for his character. Sometimes he definitely doesn't deserve what he gets, but sometimes I think he does. But overall, I enjoy the character of Toby, and his presence is pretty funny in the show. And then you have Craig Robinson playing the character of Daryl, and I've always just enjoyed Craig Robinson. He's a funny character. Daryl is great comedic relief in many moments here. You feel for his character sometimes. He's not one of my favorites, but I definitely enjoyed Daryl throughout the entirety of the show, and some of the black humor that he brings to the show, specifically around the character of Michael Scott, I find that to be pretty funny, and I love the line delivery given by Craig Robinson. He has this very natural feel and vibe to him in his performances, and it definitely suits this show. Then you have Ellie Kemper, who plays the character of Erin, and she's cute, she's likable throughout the show, but she's not one of my favorites, and her whole storyline of trying to look for her parents, it just doesn't really ever work for me when I see those episodes and when I see the show, and being able to watch it this time. I feel for her at times, but I'm not crazy about her character, and it's crazy to see that she's gone on to become this far bigger actress with her own show after this one, so good on her. But yeah, she's not one of my favorite characters in the show. Don't dislike her, but I don't have an abundance to say about her, but I wanted to at least mention her because Erin is a pretty big part of the show. Then the last character that I'm going to mention that I really want to kind of give a big praise to is the character of Holly. She's played by Amy Ryan. She has a pretty short period of time in the show overall, and she's easily one of my favorite characters. There's something that ends up happening later on with the character of Michael Scott and Holly that you both love and hate, and you know, it's mainly because of behind the scenes situations that this kind of thing happened in the show. But man, Holly was one of my favorite characters in the show, and I feel like she's too short-lived on the show. I won't say why if you've never seen it before, but I think Amy Ryan does an incredible job of creating a very lovable, likable, silly character, and I really enjoy the chemistry between her and Steve Carell in many points of the show that she's in. So yeah, overall, I think Holly's one of my favorite characters of the show, even though she has such a brief time. But this show is loaded with so many other actors and characters, and if I sat here trying to list off all of them, I would take all of your time, and this is already going far longer than I anticipated. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up my thoughts here on The Office. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Who's your favorite character? Who's your least favorite character? What's your favorite episode? What's your favorite season? Do you like the show at all? Have you ever even seen it? If you've never seen the show, I highly recommend it. If you sat through all of this and you've heard me talk about it, I hope if you enjoy my videos and if you take my advice in any way, shape, or form, I do highly recommend checking out The Office. I think it's an incredibly well acted and just well written show that has so many great memorable moments, and I think it has some of the greatest character moments that you'll see in any comedy. So that's gonna be my thoughts on The Office. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Please do hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. It helps the channel out. Please comment, also helps the channel out, and subscribe for more videos because that also helps the channel out as well. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Always a pleasure to be able to talk to you guys or this camera, knowing that it's gonna be going to you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.